The Monster Guys podcast begins now.
Welcome to the Monster Guys podcast. I'm DC McGannon. I'm here with C. Michael McGannon once again. How you doing, Michael?
Tonight has been a crazy night. I'm awake.
All right, well, here we are in our witching hour once again. We're actually a little bit early. It's not quite 1 a.m. this morning yet, but we're going to be talking about something kind of spooky.
Very spooky.
It is very spooky, and it's very real, very tangible, actually quite visceral for a lot of people around the world.
Oh yeah, we've talked on this podcast about incubi and succubi and fairies, and those can be, some people still have spottings of those things, but this is one that a lot of people still hold to be true, still have sightings of all the time.
Yeah, still tell their children bedtime stories or stay out of the water, stay out of the woods type of stories. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be talking about La Llorona.
Yes.
Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, yes. I think.
I hope so. I actually, that's a difficult word for me to roll off the tongue. I believe some of my Spanish-speaking friends would probably slap me. So I have to take my time saying that one.
Here's a bit of a disclaimer, I guess, that we should just go ahead and throw out there. Some of the words that we will be using are not our native tongue, so please be forgiving to us.
Yes, please have mercy, because we will try, and we always try to be respectful with language and, people's native tongues, but we're not great all the time at translating those through our own mouth.
Nope, I can type it perfectly, but, saying it's another matter sometimes.
So what's interesting is that this figure goes by other names as well. La Llorona, and also known as the White Woman.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the Weeping Woman, yes.
Or the Weeping Woman.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about it, and really what we're going to do tonight, because we're going to set up a little bit differently. Probably not going to have Tales of the Unknown in tonight's episode.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I know. It'll be back. We've got some interesting things coming up with that. But we're going to do this a little bit more interview style, because you've put in a lot of time with some research and have some insights that I've actually not been able to mull over myself so much. And this is a story that you've kind of had some insight into for quite some time. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to kind of sort of interview you.
Well, you should have told me this earlier. I would have brought my coffee mug.
What's that got to do with it?
So I could sip my coffee mug. It's an interview.
People
have those, right?
That's true.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, I may or may not have had a little bit of sipping, drinking going on earlier, but I'm not going to.
Without me?
I'm not going to claim that. So I don't know. Maybe we can bring some coffee in later. I don't know. But here we go. I'm going to talk to you. You're going to give us some really cool stuff about La Llorona.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Shoot, fire away.
Okay, bang. Well, the first, just tell me, who is she? Where does she originate? And what's kind of the big picture story about La Llorona?
Oh goodness. Okay, so like we were saying, this is still a widespread story, and really the origins are thought to go back even as far as like the Aztec mythology.
Okay, so pretty far back.
Yeah, but I'll go ahead. Let's just give ground story, I guess.
Okay.
So there was once upon a time, tale dark and stormy. No.
Ooh.
Once a long time ago, I guess I should say, in a smallish village, there was a girl named Maria.
Oh, Maria.
Yes.
Maria.
No, not that one.
I just met a girl named Maria.
You don't want to meet this one. I don't think so.
Are you sure?
She'll drown your children.
Maria. What?
Yes, that one.
What the hell, Maria?
Yes. This becomes a.
By the way,
dark,
folks,
cautionary
ladies
tale.
and gentlemen, I cannot sing, so do not hold a grudge against me for that.
You had
but
a
I
thespian
love,
background.
I do, but I love musicals. I was actually in West Side Story one time. Will not claim any awards for that performance, but I had a blast. So anyway, Maria
was
my vocal coach from high school. Would probably be kicking me in the face right now. Doc Lanier, if you're listening to this, I apologize. I'm not sitting up straight. I'm not singing from my diaphragm. My mouth is not wide. You know, all the stuff that you taught me, I'm not doing it right now. So,
It still sounds good to me.
Maria.
Readers, what do you think? Or readers,
And my
listeners?
theater coach, Danny Dilks, one of the most incredible teachers in the world ever, she would slap me right now too, because shame on me for singing that song without doing all the right stuff. Anyway, okay, so Maria, who kills children, apparently in this story.
Okay, but she's not quite there yet.
Oh,
Takes
okay,
a
let's
little
go
bit to
back.
drive her over the edge. But yes, she was a fickle
Well, why
girl.
don't we not drive Maria over the edge?
It already happened.
Never mind.
So Maria was kind of a picky girl. She was very beautiful.
Maria,
so all of the guys in the
a
village.
picky girl, so beautiful.
Yes, she had lots of
All the
people.
guys loved her.
pretty much,
But
but she ignored them all because they
That's
were
rude.
not. It wasn't that they weren't handsome or not skilled enough. They weren't of high birth.
high birth. What the heck does that mean? High birth. What does high birth mean?
Well,
That sounds disgusting. What the heck does high birth mean?
They were not rich.
That sounds like. Never mind.
They were poor. Basically.
Okay, so they were not wealthy. They were
Right.
not born into wealth.
They were not, and they were not
birth.
higher class. Maybe I should say that they weren't born into a high
High
position.
high birth, Michael. Come on.
You know what I mean?
That was refined. She was not born into high birth. What the heck?
She was. They
That
were.
sounds like something gone wrong in the birthing room or something.
Well, that's exactly it. They were not refined, gentlemen.
Okay.
One day.
But wait, was Maria of wealth?
Depends on the story.
Oh.
In some
Okay.
stories, yes. But
I'm doing a pretty good job with this interview so far, aren't I?
fantastic.
I am a great interviewer.
But anyways, one
Alec
day,
Baldwin
one day,
would want me on his podcast.
he would interrupt you, wouldn't he? He kind of does that.
He does, but he does it in the most amazing way that
He's smooth.
he is smooth. He's
Very
smooth,
He's
just
silky
like the
smooth.
smooth jazz that opens up his podcast.
Exactly.
He's smooth.
We're not smooth. We go bump in the night.
Well, that's what we are.
That is. But anyways, this cool dude, this dude of high birth.
Oh my gosh, stop saying that.
This-
High birth. This dude of wealth. This dude of
This higher
refinement.
higher classed gentleman rolls into town one day.
Yes, there you go. High class, cultured.
Wealthy, good at raising horses and doing stuff like
okay,
that.
now
back
you're
then.
going backwards again.
Anyways, this guy rolls
good
into
at
town.
raising
She
horses.
falls head over heels, and he sees her.
Have you ever thought about that though? Head over heels.
It sounds painful. To be
Okay,
honest.
so Maria falls head over heels for this dude.
Yes,
Okay.
and she decides, hey, I'm gonna go marry him. He also falls head over heels for her. Her parents warn her against it. Say, it's too fast. Say that he, they've seen him. They say he's probably just in love with your looks and not gonna actually stick around. And she elopes with him, and they go get married without their blessing. All of that jazz, and have
Smooth
have two
jazz.
kids.
Not so smooth jazz.
No, not so smooth. But they have two kids.
There's a warning tale here.
oh yeah,
young
this
folk.
this is a cautionary.
Do
tale.
not go without the blessing. Do not run away. Do not elope, especially if you're not with high-birthed people.
Where was I? Where was I in this story?
I don't know. They eloped.
Yeah, and then they had a couple happy years of marriage, raised a couple kids, and then lo and behold, another girl catches this guy's fancy, and he starts to spend time with this other woman.
Is her name Maria?
No,
Maria.
It depends on the story, but no. But basically,
I just met a girl named Maria.
Maria being the hot-headed,
I wasn't
fickle-
even on tune. Yeah, I'm gonna get in trouble.
She, she's always been a little picky, a little fickle, and she goes nuts. She goes
Okay,
insane with
wait.
jealousy.
What's the other girl's name?
It depends on the story. There's so many different variations.
But give me just one. Do you know any of the girls' names? This is important.
Let's call her...
Never mind.
I don't remember.
Okay.
All of my research was spent on the weird stuff. Let's call her Francine.
Francine.
Sounds like a very...
That sounds like a very high birth name.
Anyways, so he goes off with this other woman, and Maria goes insane with jealousy, and she actually ends up drowning her children.
Well, wait a second. Shouldn't Francine be the target of her?
Yes.
Okay, but she drowns her children.
Yes. And herself.
And herself because of her jealousy over this other woman.
Basically, she takes out the entire family because, she's mad with rage.
But he lives.
Yes. He does.
Okay. Wow, that doesn't sound...
There, and like I said,
familiar at all, does it?
there are a lot of different variations of the story. Some of the older variations, it's not the children who die, but the husband. But for the purpose of La Llorona, the weeping woman that is well known today, she takes out the children. And this is important because when she dies and gets to the pearly gates up to heaven, she goes to walk in, and they stop her and ask her, where are your kids?
I was going to say, she goes to heaven after drowning her kids?
Well, that's the thing. They ask, where are your children? And she can't give an answer. And they're
Who is they?
The stories don't say it's St. Peter or anybody like that, but I'm assuming it's...
We got some missing information
some
here.
fluffy dude at the gates of heaven. It's Heaven's Bouncer.
Where are your children, Maria?
Heaven's Bouncer is saying, you cannot come in without your children.
Dang straight.
So they send her back down to Earth to roam the world and find her children and say, you cannot come in here until you get these guys.
Okay, so the weeping woman, the white woman, La Llorona, Maria, falls in love, gets married, has kids. The guy goes off and has an affair. Maria goes stark raving mad, kills the children, kills herself by drowning. Some stories say she kills him. Does Francine ever get killed? Does the other woman ever get killed?
No, not that I recall.
Okay, so she's dead, the kids are dead, she goes to heaven, however that happens, and the guy up in heaven's like, nope, can't come through because you don't have your kids, but you're not going to hell, you're going to go back to Earth.
Right.
And you're going to roam the Earth
the whole
for
point,
eternity.
Well, the point was to go find her children.
Oh, okay, so go back to Earth and find your kids.
Yes.
You should know where they are because you killed them.
Well, they're spirits. We're talking about spirits because your kids need to come to heaven. You need to enter with your
But
children.
shouldn't she know where they are?
Well, that's the thing. She drowned them in a river.
Okay.
So
the river took them away.
I would go stretch for the imagination, yes.
Okay. So she's back down on Earth. She's roaming around now as a spirit.
Yes. And this is where we get the boogeyman of La Llorona, if I can go so far as to call her a boogeyman.
I would say that's boogeyman material.
Yeah, because basically now she's roaming around. There are a couple different variations here as well. What she's known for, dear listeners, is particularly going after children. The whole story of the La Llorona is a story told to children to say, number one, there's the cautionary tale of Maria, but number two, there's the story to children to say, hey, don't go down by the river without adults at night because you might fall and get drowned by this weeping woman.
So that's the basic story.
The basic story, yes.
Okay, what about the modern story? That's the cultural story, if you will. That's the
origin
story of origin. What about today? What's the modern story, the current boogeyman story that's floating around out there today?
Well, that's just it. That's basically it. Is kids.
You like how smooth that interview question just rolled in there?
Smooth jazz.
I'm getting to be smooth jazz.
Late night with the monster guys.
Whatever.
Okay. I don't think we can do that.
Not yet. We're not that refined yet, folks.
Not high. Okay.
Don't.
Anyways, moving on. The modern story. She's kind of an urban legend at this point. She's still got that folklore origin, but at this point, at this day and age, people still see the white woman at the river, still hear her crying. She actually, the stories say she walks around weeping out the words, "Oh, my children, my children." And
so real people are actually seeing this, hearing this, experiencing this.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just a story that people are telling to spook to somebody, though it is. It's also something that people are reporting having seen and heard.
It's not, and that's the thing about the La Llorona, because there are lots of, weeping woman archetypes all over the world. You've got the Banshee, Llorona, we'll talk about some of these later, but she's still alive and kicking, if you will, in the monster world.
Okay, this is very interesting. So we have a folk tale, so to speak, the boogeyman, a story from ancient times, even going all the way back to the Aztecs, but people are still seeing this woman.
Yes.
Hearing this woman.
Oh, yeah.
What's going on there?
Well, that's it. I mean, there are still sightings of her walking around at the river. And the interesting thing to me, I guess, is the different variations today. Some people believe that she will kidnap children thinking that they are her own children, go and take them, unfortunately drown them, but they'll take them to, or she'll take them to heaven to try to get it back in. A darker tale is that she knows where her children are, and that she's trying to drown kids these days in place of her children, and she's constantly begging for forgiveness and is never forgiven.
So she's constantly, she's kind of repeating her own story over and over again.
As ghosts do, yes.
And seeking for atonement in that story.
And that's a common thing among, the undead and ghosts and whatnot, is that they're living in a repetition.
So is this kind of the fear that, let's say mom and dad are going to tell their kids this story, this is the fear they're trying to instill, that this woman's still out there and she could get you. If you go to the river, she could get you. If you go to the woods alone, she could get you. If you go out and be bad and get caught, she could get you, and you could be her next victim.
No, that's exactly it. She's the monster under the bed. She's the face in the trees. She's the Wampus Kitty, if you will.
The Wampus Kitty. Don't be throwing jabs at me.
I'm not throwing jabs at you.
The Wampus Kitty is real.
I know.
All right, we're going to go into the Wampus Kitty at some point, but I'm telling you, the Wampus Kitty's real.
I got you.
All right, so, okay, but La Llorona, obviously from where? Where's that story originate?
South America.
South
very
America.
Strong in Mexico still today.
Okay, but where else? Because if it's that big and it's that prominent, she's got to have some stronghold in some other areas as well.
La Llorona, yes. This is in South America. If you guys have listened to this podcast this far, you know there's a term I like to use of the universal monster.
The universal monster, yep.
Because, you have vampires all over the world, you have werewolves all over the world, you have the Weeping Woman all over the world. And she's very interesting, and let me just throw this out real quick, and you'll see why I throw this out. One of the weirder variations of La Llorona that is still around today is that when she was, turned away from heaven, she was kind of cursed at the same time, and her face is that of like a horse. So you have this...
It sounds like a Kelpie.
Yes, exactly. So you have this really creepy horse-headed lady walking around saying, "Oh, my children," and drowning people.
Let me tell you something. If I saw a horse-headed woman walking around going after kids, I'm going to be a little freaked out myself.
And I had to dig for that. You and I are from Orlando. We like to go to Universal Horror Nights when we can.
Yes.
They did
Halloween Horror Nights. Haven't been in a couple of years. I missed that place.
They did there was a theme one year that was based off of La Llorona.
Yes, yeah, I remember that.
And there was one costume in particular in the main haunted house that year of a woman wearing a horse skeleton, or like a horse's skull.
Somebody's doing their research.
Yeah, so I was curious. I was like,
I think that might have been the last year that we actually went. Is it? Or did we go the year after that?
I don't think we got to. I think the last one we went to was Bloody Mary.
Oh, okay.
Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary. Hey, you just said it 3 times. Stop.
There's no mirror.
Okay.
I'm sitting next to a window. Why am I sitting?
Yeah,
why
you're
did you
sitting
put
next
me
to a
over
window. Ladies and gentlemen, you just learned one of Michael's fears.
Can
a
we
window.
switch places?
No, because there's a window over here with me too. But it's at your back.
It's farther away.
It's okay. If I see a white woman at your window, I'll let you know.
Okay. Horse-headed white women.
Maria,
The reason this
I
is...
just saw Maria in the window.
I'm moving.
Michael's over here freaking out, ladies and gentlemen.
The next podcast,
freaking
I am moving.
out. I'm just letting you know. There's a lot of... He's turning red. His mouth is going dry. There's a lot of activity taking place right now in this room. You should not have said Bloody Mary 3 times. Mirror or no mirror, you just messed up, buddy. So variations... I'm going to pull you out of this one. Variations on the Weeping Woman's story. And you talked about the horse head.
Yes.
Kind of a Kelpie type.
Yeah.
Even though that's from a European
Ireland
origin.
and Scotland.
But we see the white woman or the Weeping Woman, La Llorona, with a horse head.
Yeah. And, talking about monsters all over the world, you see weeping women. You see the white lady archetype all over the place. You have the Banshee in Ireland, in Scotland, who is known for, washing a funeral shroud down by the river and crying out these loud funeral hymns. Also in Ireland and Scotland, you have this water spirit called the Kelpie. And this is a shape-shifting creature that oftentimes appears as a horse, a white horse, kind of drinking by ponds and rivers.
Yeah, and actually we write a little bit about Kelpie
Yes.
in book 2 of our Charlie Sullivan and the Monster Hunters series, there's actually a battle that takes place with a group of Kelpie.
Yes, and we use in that. Let's be specific. In there, we actually there's a halfway point for the Kelpie. Like I said, it's a shapeshifter. Sometimes it appears as a huge burly creature. Sometimes it appears as a horse. Mm-hmm. And some people see it kind of halfway, where it is a humanoid horse figure. This horse figure will actually grab people and drown them in water, kind of like La Llorona.
That's very interesting. So here we have the South American tale. We see influences as far away as Ireland. Where else?
It'll sound familiar. You have sirens. You have these female water spirits that drag people down to their depths. But let's take it past that point in the world. Let's go all the way to Japan, where we delve a lot into yokai. One is the Llorona, which literally means the wet woman. And this is a woman that's oftentimes seen in distress down by the river. Sometimes she's carrying a baby, and she kind of lures in men and women, specifically men actually, that kind of feel sorry for her. And this monster interests me because it's not going after the bad guy, it's going after the person who wants to help. The stories say that if you go and try to help her, she will, hand the baby off to you and say, can you help me just hold him for a second? This baby becomes like this heavy stone that traps you, and then this woman shifts into not a horse, but a giant snake, and crushes you and drags you down to the depths.
That's some pretty scary stuff.
Yeah. It is interesting, though, all of these, these feminine water spirits, they all shapeshift in some way, and then they drag you down.
Well, and then also in Japan, you and I were talking about this maybe earlier tonight or yesterday or something about the Naparabo.
Yes,
which we've actually done some live retelling of that story in comedic form at some of our events. Which, by the way, we have another one coming up, Wizard World.
Yeah,
Tulsa Comic-Con will be there again this year. Last year, I think, during that event, we actually did a live retelling of the Naparabo. But this faceless ghost. Mm-hmm. Has a bit of correlation there.
It is interesting because another one of those weirder variations of La Llorona, she has so many, is that she is faceless. She has no face when she's wandering around. And the Naparabo is kind of a widespread tale on her own.
I think that's the spooky part for a lot of people.
The facelessness.
I think the facelessness. I think it's that total imagination just going crazy because you cannot physically see any formation there. Therefore, your mind just does all kinds of stuff to you.
That would be, Slender Man's a popular thing still.
Faceless.
Mm-hmm. You have a faceless Buddhist creature that the blind man from Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth was based off of. You have these creepy things all over the place.
So it's the faceless story of the Naparabo kind of...
Who's seen by water, oftentimes.
Right.
So yeah, you have this archetype that is literally all over the world.
Okay, so my question at this point is, you have the Weeping Woman, you have La Llorona, and there again, I'm probably butchering that, and I apologize, but you have this story originating in South America, very popular in Mexico, and even different parts of the South United States, I believe, and then you see some of these similar stories with the Kelpie over in Ireland, Scotland, you've got the stories we just talked about from Japan. Which one came first? Which one dates back the farthest? Is one influencing the other, or is this the same thing being seen all over the world? Do we have any kind of dating on these stories?
I don't know. I feel like, because the story of the sirens is pretty old, but that is referenced as, those beasts or those creatures were said to be older than the story of, the guys who stuffed cotton in their ears.
Okay, but you have this woman that we see by the river or by a body of water drowning children or trying to capture children, or in the case of the story from Japanese storytelling, passing the baby off and then trapping the victim. Are we seeing the same person? Are we seeing the same woman in various cultures? Is this the same spirit, or do we have variations of the same story? Do we have an original story from going all the way back to the Aztecs, or do we have an original story going all the way back to ancient Japan? Or
I feel like...
Who's influencing who? Where's this coming from?
I feel like, really, and this is maybe a scary thought, I feel like each one has its own... It's got to have its own origin at some point. I'm sure somewhere in history these cultures crossed paths way back when, but you have very similar stories that vary just slightly here and there. And you have this almost instinctual formation of feminine water spirits that can shapeshift all over the place. And
so this is a case of the universal monster where humanity has created something or experienced something, and they have to tell a story to cope with it.
I feel like it's just like asking, where does the boogeyman come from? I mean, that's so all over the place.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but this is very specific. The woman, the children, the water, oftentimes the faceless. I mean, is this something that all cultures have had to create or experience in order to cope with something? Or give reason for something? Or defend something?
I really feel like it's I feel like the strong... Like for La Llorona, there is the whole thing of, don't run off and get married too soon to somebody that's going to...
That's kind of superficial, though. I think it would have to go deeper than that.
That's what I'm saying, is that's specific to her. But, the stories of the Banshee, the stories of Jenny Greenteeth, the stories of Llorona and La Llorona, and then your sirens, these are all things that are, I feel like they're deeply rooted inside of us. We have fears of heights, we have fears of the dark. I think there's a very heavy instinctual fear, especially in the older world, of your children running off and drowning when you're not watching. I mean, to take it a little bit off of the white woman here, you have the kappa in Japan.
Right.
And the kappa, has influenced quite a few monsters and
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Or all the turtles in Mario, the Koopa game. The kappa were another version of a water monster that were known for drowning young boys, particularly in the river. And I feel like all of these are just a way to keep kids from drowning. I really feel like it's a strong fear of the next generation, being lost in that way. And it is if you think about having to go through that as a parent, that's some pretty heavy stuff.
Well, yeah, experiencing that as a parent, and I would say, especially going back to the old worlds,
definitely.
More ancient times, ancient civilizations, where so many civilizations were built around water out of necessity.
Precisely. I mean,
and being around water so much, and probably during that time, really having to deal with and cope with a very real problem of losing people to the water.
Yeah, and it's not easy to tell your kids, hey,
kids don't go play in the water.
Exactly, and
doesn't sound as scary as if you go to the water.
Exactly,
the ghost is going to take you down.
Because the kid is thinking, I've jumped on those stones when people are around in the daylight. I've gone there with my friends all the time. I'll be okay. And then, one night he slips on a rock or something and then is found the next day washed up.
Or never found.
Yeah. In the case of her just outright kidnapping children, yes. So it's a lot easier to tell kids, don't go out. I mean, it's a lot easier to say, hey, there's the boogeyman, don't go out or he'll get you, than it is to say, hey, don't go slip on the rock.
So this could be, the white woman, the weeping woman, La Llorona, could be one of the original and most horrifying versions of the boogeyman.
Well, why else would we have so many different types?
I mean, we have so many different types of so many different monsters, period, but there's a real strong case for the universal monster here, and based in, not just, that's scary to walk through the woods, but real loss. Your kids being lost to the ocean or to the river current, or your husband and your wife, or whatever's in the water taking you down. You got no explanation for it, and so you, as humanity does, we devise stories to help us cope and help us explain and help us defend. We've talked about a little bit of this with some of the previous episodes, especially with the incubus and succubus, about why we create some of those stories. But this goes beyond religion and some of the stuff we've talked about before. There's a tangible fear that has created this story and caused parents throughout the ages to say, this is the boogeyman that you need to be worried about.
Yeah, there's a reason. Sometimes we get so caught up in Hollywood and all the fancy dressed vampires, the highly suave gentleman vampires,
the high-birthed vampires.
That one. We get so caught up in Hollywood that we forget why we believed in monsters in the first place.
I'm going to be the background music to your commentary here.
Can you do like a saxophone?
Maria, Maria, Maria.
That's not a saxophone.
I can't do a saxophone. I can hardly sing.
Can you do a cello? But yeah, we forget because we get all caught up in Wes Craven's cursed werewolf guy who's flipping off the cops in werewolf form.
Yeah, that's...
I still can't get over that.
But okay, that's cool though. It's very interesting.
But we forget about why we believed in monsters. That fear of walking down the hallway at night when you're a kid. That fear of going and playing in those woods. The cautionary tales.
I believe that if we know the why behind the monster is much more scary. I don't get scared a whole lot. I don't get scared at all with all these monsters and boogeymen that we have in the movies and Hollywood and TV. There's not, I mean...
Oh, I know.
You got to go back and you got to give me a real story and a real basis into why this monster exists to make me stop and think about it.
I know that. I mean, it's fun to watch you walk through a haunted house because you're sitting there talking to the scare actors.
I love it.
And I can see some scare actors that you walk by and you're talking to them as they're jumping out and trying to scare the crap out of you. They're just sitting there scratching their head wondering what is wrong.
Well, a lot of it's very predictable. And I still have, I actually, I have fun, whereas a lot of people get terrified by that kind of stuff. But I mean, really, werewolves and vampires and everything, we've watered it down so much. We've lost the story, we've lost the origin, we've lost the why. And I think going back with something like, the Weeping Woman here, there's a real strong why she exists. No matter where you are in the world, but especially in some of these origin stories we were talking about from South America and Mexico and everything, that's some scary stuff. That's some really terrifying basis for this monster. And I think if you go back to stories like this and figure out why she exists, then you have a scary monster.
Yeah. When you talk about scary monsters, not only just, kids falling in, but the whole thing of your kids being kidnapped back then as well. I mean, it's...
And I think that's very relevant today. Yeah, in the way the world is moving today. We've got some real scary stuff going on in the world, especially where kids are concerned. And, I think it's the forefront of a lot of people's minds. So there's some activity in the world today that may not be the same story, but it has some similar effect.
It's still widespread, too. And, one of the white women archetypal creatures that we didn't talk about was, it's a creature in the Philippines, actually. Really long name. I'm not going to try to pronounce it here. You can...
Just know that if it comes from the Philippines and then it's a monster, it's probably pretty darn scary.
It's horrendous.
And roots in some really ugly stuff.
It talks about how, if your eyes are open when you see it, it'll suck your eyes out and rip organs out through... Yeah,
Yummy.
We don't want to talk about it here. But, it's another white woman, and she's seen, there are a lot of pranksters that have done hoaxes, but there are some documented stories of her still being seen throughout, like, the 1950s and stuff.
Yeah, so some real interesting stuff. But here's my question now as we move forward. What does this mean for us today? What does this mean for us as a human race, emotionally, psychologically? Where does this story take us right now?
Kids, don't go out at night without your parents to the river.
Okay, you heard it here. You heard it here first.
I mean, that's just it. That's the real push behind La Llorona. And I guess, I don't know. Do we still tell kids those stories? I mean, do we tell them don't act up or the Wampus Kitty will get you? Do we say don't go playing in the woods with your friends without us?
Because a clown might find you?
Yeah, or do we just flat out say, hey, this stuff happens to kids who, sometimes aren't careful, don't play around with this?
I think there's more to it. I think it goes back to that very primal fear mechanism. Yeah. Not just in kids, but in everybody. We have a lot of things to be worried about, or that we can be worried about in today's modern culture. Yes, it's a cautionary tale. I think emotionally, mentally, I think this is the type of... And we don't tell these stories very much anymore. This is one of the things that kind of disappoints me with storytelling, is that larger cultures, like... I'm just going to take our own in America. We don't tell a lot of these stories anymore. We've gotten caught up in a lot of reality TV and making a bunch of stuff up to boost the ratings, but...
Yeah, and Hollywood. Yeah.
And Hollywood and TV and everything. But let's go back to the origins of these stories and then apply it to today's world. I think we've got a lot that we can correlate, that we can bring alongside the storytelling. And maybe I'm not going to be crazy about don't go in the water because you might drown, because I'm going to be keeping watch over my kids. But I think there's a lot of stuff in the world today that we have to warn, and you do that through storytelling.
Yeah, a healthy dose of storytelling is always good. I mean, that's the way we've learned forever, is by telling these stories and keeping those oral traditions alive.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed our discussion about La Llorona, the white woman, the weeping woman, and the variations of that story from around the world. You've also tonight had the rare opportunity to hear me sing. Might not ever hear that again, ladies and gentlemen. Especially after I get off of this podcast, I'm probably going to get phone calls and emails from former theater directors and instructors and say, just don't ever do that again. But I can tell you that Michael is still looking over his shoulder right now at the window, wondering if the faceless woman in the window that's staring at us right now is going to get him.
I'm going to build a wall.
He's getting red. He's turning red.
I'm not turning red.
Sweating.
I'm not sweating.
He's actually kind of in the chair here, rolling up into a fetal position almost. He's got his arms around his knees.
I'm resting my arm, that's all.
You excuse for everything. Well, let me tell you something.
I'm going to be building a wall in our studio soon. So
this is fascinating. You just turned your head. You're more red on that side than you are on this side.
It does not help when you hang these cat lady faces outside my window at night. It really doesn't help.
It's so exciting, though.
For you.
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, I guess.
Oh, exciting, yes, but I don't necessarily want my heart to start going 100 miles a minute.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to sign off here pretty quickly so that Michael can move to the other room, get himself something to drink, and slow his heartbeat down a little bit, because the things in the window really do eat at him.
Hey, maybe that's what we should talk about sometime in the near future.
What's that?
The faces in the window.
Yeah, while you're sitting next to it.
No. Heck no.
I'm going to put some stuff in the window when we do that episode.
No.
Yeah, why not?
Building a wall.
So if you've got questions or comments about La Llorona, or about my butchering of its pronunciation, or you want to hire me to sing for your next event, feel free to contact us, and we'll put some show notes and information along with the podcast here. But thanks for hanging out with us. It's been a little bit different the way we're doing this tonight, but I hope you've had fun and learned a few things. I would encourage you, go research this monster, this story, because there's a lot to it, and there's a lot that we couldn't actually get into tonight, but it's a lot of fun. So
a lot of fun, long Aztec names, too.
Yeah. So thanks, Michael, for putting that research into our interview tonight. I'm going to go practice my singing and see if I can't emulate Alec Baldwin's smooth jazz a little bit better. Good night.
I might listen in just to be entertained.
You will be entertained. Good night, everyone, and we'll see you again next week, hopefully.
Yes, good night.